He's here with us tonight, and he'll be talking about challenging in home. Julio is the co-founder of the Spiritist Center Divine Light in Newark, New Jersey, which he coordinates with a group of friends and has become a prolific speaker, disseminating the Spiritist message, not only in the tri-state area, but also in the Union County Jail, where he works as a mental health counselor. Besides that, as we always said, a great friend, and a great friend that is in this work of spreading Spiritism, on this work of helping others with the enlightened message of the life eternal, as we read here earlier today. So with no further ado, we pass the word for our dear friend Julio.
Good evening, everyone. I am so happy to be back. Thank you so much for inviting me again to this place that I could see old friendship once again continuing the good work of spreading this message that it is inevitable for our growth, indispensable for our happiness. We are, at this moment, inside an organism. This organism is made up of organs, our heart, kidneys, our liver, and the organs themselves are made up of tissues. Tissues are made up of cells. So when someone gets sick, science, through the process of reductionism, will try to find out what's wrong with their organism. And you eventually see that something is not right with the cells. If the cells are sick, hence, it compromises the entire body. The same goes for a society. A society is an organism made up of cells. And what are these cells? The family. Family is a cell of a society. And as long as the cells are sick, so will be the society as well. Therefore, in order to change our society, we must have healthy individuals living together to make up a healthy family, thus producing a healthy society. Then we conclude, peace in the world starts really within you. You are a fundamental piece to the whole of society. And just like in a regular cell, which is made up of organelles and molecules, you are a molecule inside your family. And if the molecule is deranged, so will compromise the health of a cell. So what kind of molecules are we being in our family? Are we healthy individuals or are we very sick individuals? Now, I don't mean physically, but most importantly, emotionally. Because if we are emotionally sick, usually it's very hard for us to detect our own illnesses. It's very hard for us to detect that we are sick emotionally or spiritually. And this is where Spiritism comes to help us by giving us an idea how we can detect our own illness, our own emotional flaws. As you can see, in order for us to identify a certain disease in a body, we need a microscope to identify the cause of the problem. Now, we can't do that with our emotional problems. There are no microscopes that we can get a piece of you and look under the microscope and say, well, this is what's actually wrong with you emotionally. It's impossible to detect our personal flaws, our emotional imperfections by looking at a microscope. Because a microscope cannot identify the causes of our disturbances in our relationships, in our families. And what are these problems? Well, these problems are envy, greed, laziness, jealousy, pride, and the mother of all these imperfections, selfishness. There is no microscope that we can actually take a piece of us and look at it and say, well, I could see here from this piece of Julio that he's a very selfish individual. There is no microscope to do that. So how can we identify these imperfections? Well, we don't even know that these imperfections are the cause of our emotional instability to begin with. Because whenever we are confronting any problems, whenever we are facing challenges in life, most of us, we have a stance to take. Most of us, we like to portray a specific act. We want to fulfill a specific role, and that's the role of a victim. We all enjoy being very much a victim. Why? Well, because it's so easy to be a victim. There's no work to be done. I am sad because you neglected me. I am unhappy because you don't love me. I haven't done anything with my life because you stopped me from doing it. Someone is responsible for our unhappiness. Now, why most of us love to take the victim role? Well, that's because in order to be a victim, all we need is just one working finger to point at those who are responsible for our unhappiness. But the major problem with being a victim is that we, as human rational beings, where we find the cause of the problem is also where we find the solution to the problem. So let's say your car breaks down, and the cause of the problem is the alternator. Now, if you keep changing the starter, would you ever get the car to run again? Absolutely not. Because if the problem is the alternator, the solution is the alternator. Because where we see the cause of the problem is also where we see the solution to the problem. So if I believe my ex-husband is the cause of my pain, he now becomes the solution to my pain. If I see that my mother-in-law is the cause of my pain, she now becomes the solution to my pain. And what we're trying to do to be happy, we are expecting these people to change in order for our lives to improve. And you know when that's going to happen? Never. Because people will not change their lives to please your needs. People do change themselves, but to please them, not you. So when we place on someone else's hands the responsibility of making us happy, we're just choosing to be miserable. And since we are expecting them to change and they will not change, we create a psychiatric symptom very well known as anxiety. What is anxiety? Anxiety is when we want something to happen, but then it doesn't. And since we're waiting to change and there is no change, we actually change our sensation of time. The more anxious you are, the slower time passes by. In other words, if you are suffering because someone has neglected you, if you are suffering because someone caused you pain and you're expecting them to change, your sensation of misery, it's actually prolonged because you're expecting them to do something to please you and they will never do it. So Spiritism calls us to be responsible for our happiness. We are the cause of our happiness, so as to our unhappiness. But as long as we are blind to this reality, we will constantly look for someone to blame for our misery. And we are postergating the opportunity of being happy. And family are great places for us to develop our potential to be happy. Mainly, Spiritism says that the individual problems and collective problems have one cause. In essence, that cause is selfishness. If you trace back all the problems that we have in our society and all of our personal problems, it has to do with selfishness. What is selfishness? It's only when I think of I. It's I and me. And Michael Jackson wrote a beautiful song, which I love it, about Ben. Because once he knew Ben, it became us and we, not I and me. In other words, we're thinking of someone else before we think of ourselves. And in the process of helping those who are in need, we are helping ourselves. Being unselfish or selfless, it's not just a matter of a moral cause or a standard of faith. It's actually how the physical world works. Coming back to the cell again, let's say the cell, a particular cell in our body, a particular organ in our body, says to himself, you know what? I don't want to be concerned with the rest of this organism. I am the kidneys and I am the most important organ in this body. I don't care what happens to the heart, to the skin, to the liver. What would happen with the body? That's it. It will decompose. You know? If an atom, which is composed of a proton, electron, neutron, if the electron decide, you know what, I want to be selfish right now. I don't want to care about protons and neutrons. Let me do my thing. And he escaped the molecule bonds. What happened with the atom? You will become unstable, and the universe as it is will be impossible to exist. What happens when we look at the solar system, the microcosm, and if the moon decided, you know what, I don't care about the planet anymore. I need to think about my own needs. And she left her circular orbiter. What would happen with the entire solar system? It will go completely disarray. So you see, sharing is at the core of everything that exists. So when we don't share, we become against the natural laws. And it is impossible for our lives to work if we are going against the natural laws with our behaviors. So this is not just a matter of belief. These are physical laws. When interpreted in the moral world, we need to understand that as long as we only think about ourselves, we are going against the principles that govern our lives. These principles, they don't need our approval. We don't need to believe in them. We don't have to care about them, but there's nothing we can do to escape from them. So once we learn and we put the principles into practice in our daily lives, peace is just a consequence of doing that. While disturbance and emotional misery is just a consequence of us running from these principles. So we find in question 913 of the Spirit's book, what is the cause of all of our problems? What is the root to all of our misery, all of our madness on the planet? And the Spirits, they say, selfishness, as we have explained. So then we have another very important question on the same book, on question 775. And this is the question that will lead us to speak about the topic today, family challenges. What would be for society if we decided to live as single people? Will we never get ourselves into family anymore? Let's say just everyone decided to be single and we didn't live as families anymore. What would be the result for society if that happened? And the Spirits have answered. A magnification of our selfishness. Instead of becoming less selfish, living as single people will actually magnify, will increase the amount of selfishness in us. And the more selfish we are, the more we distance ourselves from our objective, from God. The less selfish we are, the closer we get to God. We feel the love, we experience peace. So living in family gives us an opportunity to be less selfish. And the question is, how do we live less selfish together with a family? When you are a single person, you're living by yourself, and you're tired of being home, you ask the question, where I want to go. And then you say to yourself, I want to go to the movies. Once you get to the movies, you look out of all the choices you have, and then you say to yourself, which one I want to watch? Do I want butter or less butter on my popcorn? Do I want that bucket or do I want a regular glass to drink the Coca-Cola? Because nowadays they don't serve you a cup. That's a bucket to me. You could paint a whole house with that thing. If it was paint, that's how big it is. And then, once you're done with the movie, do I want to go back home or do I still want to watch another movie? Once you find someone, you're married with this individual, the question is radically changed. Because now, if we're sitting at home and we want to go out somewhere, the question becomes where we want to go. We want to go to the movies. But it usually doesn't work that way. But let's say that particular night they had an agreement. Once they get to the movies, what kind of movies we want to watch? What we want to eat? So by getting married, you theoretically lost 50% of your free will. And once you have a child, the man's free will goes back to 25%. And if you happen to have a dog, which is my case, now you have 15% of your free will. There is nothing much that you can do of the things that you want to do because you need to attend to their needs before you attend to yours. But in the process of doing this, we are working on our selfishness. By us expending ourselves to attend to their needs, our needs will be attended as well. When we make others attend our needs, it's very hard for them to do that. We become demanding individuals. And that's one of the challenges of family relationships. When we demand from the other person to make us happy, that's one of the greatest challenges. I am not happy because of you. It's your job to make me happy. What a heavy job. And usually this sort of behavior starts even before they become husband and wife. How this person see themselves as a half of an individual. They are not complete as it is. They see themselves as being half of something. Because when you ask them, do you have a boyfriend or girlfriend? They usually say, I'm still looking for my other half. If you're looking for your other half, it means that you are half. And if you are half, mathematically speaking, you are -1/2. If you feel as if you're half of something, you're -1/2. And because of the law of affinity, likes attract likes, guess what kind of person you're going to find? Is it someone who feels complete? No. Because of the law of affinity, you will find someone who also feels that they're half of someone else. I'm looking for someone to make me happy. If we feel that we are half, that's what we're looking for. Someone to complete us because we feel incomplete. So due to the law of affinity, that's exactly who we're going to find. Someone who feels they are a half. So now we have the mathematical expression -1/2 plus -1/2 equals what? Equals -1. In other words, both of us are going to make ourselves very unhappy. Because we will be demanding from one another. It's your job to make me happy. When in reality, when we are single individuals, we should be happy with ourselves. We should feel complete. And as we do this, as we work on ourselves to feel happy as it is, because of the law of affinity, guess what kind of people we're going to find? Someone who also feels complete. This is someone who will not put pressure on us to make them feel happy because they're happy. So since we feel complete, in mathematical terms, we will be +1. Due to the law of affinity, we'll find someone who's also +1. And the both of us will be two separate individuals. And now we have a healthy relationship to start with, because we're not demanding on one another to make us happy. Usually half people, they look for a self-reflection, not someone else. This is what they say. I want someone who likes the kind of movie I like to watch. I want someone who dresses the way I dress. I want someone that likes the kind of food I like to eat. I want someone that likes to go out the places I like to go out. I want someone that speaks like me, that sees like me. Are you really looking for someone else? Just stare yourself in the mirror. You will find that person. Because no such a person exists. God did not put us in these forms and made us by series. We are very unique individuals. And once we understand that you can only grow by working with the different, you can only grow by working with the different. Now we are psychologically mature to be with someone else. When we are psychologically immature, we think the problem lies on someone else's hands. And we might spend our lives moving from partner to partner, looking for the ideal happiness, when reality is just a lack of our perception of the real problem. By understanding that I have to work on myself to be complete as it is, those very detrimental demands will not be placed on the next relationship. So our job is to make ourselves happy. And once we do that, we will appreciate other people's difference. What we will have as a couple to have affinity is that both of us are looking to the same destiny, but we are very different people. Sometimes when you hear of a couple splitting up, this is what they say. The reason why they split up is because they were incompatible. You heard that sentence before? Now, when you buy a software for a computer, that software must be compatible. It must work with the computer. It must have the same attributes in order for them to work together. So usually when that happens, it's not that they were incompatible, these two individuals. They actually were compatible. They were two people that appeared to be very much alike one another. When they were fighting, if she screamed, he yelled. When she became silent, he decided to be mute. Because of pride, they started doing worse of what the other individual was doing it. This is compatibility. It will work really fine if one decided to yell and the other one became mute, because now one talks and the other one listens. And I know women got this perfectly right. Because you do most of the talking, don't you? Why? Women, in order for them to express themselves, they need to speak, not men. That comes natural with women. Men, in order to think, they need to think. Usually a woman comes up when she sees her man thinking too much. She might ask the question, "What are you thinking?" And this is a respond, gentlemen, that you could give to them. If I wanted you to know what I was thinking, I'll be speaking, not thinking. I know there's just a few of us in here. Look at it. This group is populated by women. But communication is the key ingredient to any challenge that we might have in our families. How can we solve our problems without communicating? And usually, when we are getting into fights, we give one another the silent treatment because we are so mad with this other person that we simply don't want to express ourselves anymore. And men, this is not a good advice. But if you want to irritate your woman, please don't say anything. That is the best way you can get her into her nerves. Just open your mouth and say anything. If there is something that we, and I put myself on this, we can all learn from this experience, is that just say anything. There's nothing right that will come out of your mouth because she's not looking for the correct answer. She's just looking for your involvement in whatever the problem that she's having. That's what she's looking for. Just give her any answer. Would be way better than you just be mute. Isn't this theory right? Mm-hmm. Yes? Do I get the approval of the females? Yes or no? That's such a weak yes. Yes or no? Yeah. Just say anything. She wants the emotional support. And I know that's too hard for us to grasp because we look for emotional support in a very different way. There are many challenges to live as a couple, but if we can actually place one of the biggest one is the lack of communication. How can we discuss? How can we relate our problems if the communication is not there? We're not saying anything. How can we work on the problem if the problem is not being discussed? It's impossible. We start off our relationships with these masks on our face. We don't present ourselves the way we are. We put a mask in our face, the mask of perfection. The man is so gentle and sweet and bring flowers. And she wants to believe in that sort of thing. It happens in the beginning, of course. And the woman, she's so tender and caring, and she shows all her cooking attributes to you. Little do you know that she's buying the stuff from a near restaurant. This is the mask on our face. Once we get into the relationship, too soon, 5 months, 6 months, a year, my friends, 1 year, it's absolutely nothing to know who this other person is. Absolutely nothing. Because having this mask on, actors and actresses, we can have this mask on for a good 2 years. After the second year, the mask starts to fall. And now we're dealing with this individual that we have no idea who this person is. So usually when we have someone coming to a session to discuss marital problems, this is the main complaint. I don't know why he changed so much. And he would say the same thing. I don't know, she's a completely different person to me. I don't know why she changed. In reality, these people didn't change. This is how they always have been. But we're so blind with passion, with our hormones, that we didn't see it before. Other people in our lives try to tell us who this other person was. But we failed to listen to them because we were in passion. We were falling in love. And I love that verb because it expresses really well what's going on. We are falling in love. We are falling out of ourselves. That's what's going on. Once we're through that stage, then reality kicks in. And now there is scientific evidence to back up this argument. Because usually the hormones in our body, that it's constantly making us reproduce so we can continue our species, works extremely hard during those first 18 months. And that's the period we call passion. We are falling in love because the hormones, they take over the behavior. But after the 18 months, then whatever filet mignon that person was now becomes McDonald's hamburger, $1 menu. Do you understand what I'm saying? Or do I have to be more clear? And suddenly we see filet mignons everywhere else, but not inside the home anymore. Why? Because if the relationship was solely based on meeting this person for our mating needs, that will quickly run out of fuel. Our mating needs, they do exist, and is supposed to serve our family, our marriages, but the marriage doesn't exist because of our mating needs. Food is here for us to continue to exist, but we are not here to food. Some people, they eat to live. Others live to eat. Can you tell the difference? And I'm trying to use my words as wisely as I can because of the age group in front of us. So our mating needs doesn't exist in order for us to gather as families. The family doesn't exist because of this. It serves the family. So this cannot be the primordial reason why we are together. As family, the primordial need that we must congregate ourselves together are our friendship needs. To have a stable relationship, even before, especially before marriage, and if you're already married, we must be a friend to our partner. It's crucial that we are friends before we are mates. Why? Because the main thing that friends do are communication. Isn't that what friends do? Do you call a friend and both of you remain silent on the phone? No. We talk through our elbows. That's what we love to do. So if we are a friend to our spouse, now we love to communicate. But what happens? Since we don't like to communicate, we bear stuff down. All the grudge and the resentfulness we keep pushing until one day we decide to communicate. But this communication, this conversation, is heard by all our neighbors. In other words, this is a huge fight that we're having. Because when we finally decide to express ourselves, we are so contaminated by resentfulness and grudges that we are exploding. We are not talking. We are not communicating. What is the biggest challenge of living in a family? Communication. Our ability to relate to the other person, our problems. First of all, being in family, it's not all about being happy whatsoever. Because most of us are gathered in family to repair mistakes from our past reincarnations. We find in the question 920 of the Spirit's book, a question that is so deep that we thought, if we sat down and thought only about this question without reading the entire book, if we understood the content, the depth of this question, that question alone would change our lives. And the question is it possible to have complete happiness here on earth? And the highly evolved entities answered, no. Complete happiness is impossible. Why complete happiness is impossible? Well, because here we are, in a mission, going through a trial, or an expiation process. This is why complete happiness is impossible. But relative happiness is. What is a relative happiness? It means a happiness that is compatible to this planet. And the Spirit, they go on to say that it depends on us to alleviate the pain that we're going through so we can be as happy as it is on this planet. But complete happiness is impossible. Now, that alone is very powerful. Why? Because the way we deal with our problems, the way we deal with our challenges, it's all about the perception that we have of the challenge. If we have the wrong perception of the challenge, everything else will also be wrong. Just like a medical problem. If the diagnosis is wrong, the prognosis, the treatment will be completely wrong. What is the most important part of a treatment? The diagnosis. So you know what the problem is. So if the perception of my problem, of my challenge, it's wrong, the way I approach the problem will be wrong. So we hear this from Buddha, approximately 750 years before Christ, that the reason we suffer on this planet, it's because of our disillusionment. What is disillusionment? It's the process of coming out of being eluded. Let's say you have a friend, and suddenly you become very upset with this friend because this friend did not meet your expectations. Wherever you go, you're unhappy because those around you, they can't meet your expectations. Now, who have the problem? Is it your friends? Are your friends? Or we are? We are. We are creating an illusion about that person. We are making up a picture of this individual that is in our mind. And once this person does not meet our standards, our expectations, soon we have a disillusionment. We come out of this illusion. So whenever we elude ourselves, whenever we create this fantasy in ourselves, we are setting up ourselves for failure and for pain. Let's say someone tells you, you have a marathon to run in September. You say to yourself, oh, that's easy. There's nothing to it. When that day comes, you start running, you're smiling, you're joking, you're laughing for the first mile. The second mile, you're not saying a word. You become very quiet, and by the third mile, you're grasping for your air, and God knows if you're going to finish the third mile. Now, you had a disillusionment based on your false expectations. But if our perception were different, this is going to be hard. This is going to be a challenge. Now, what am I going to do? I will prepare for this race. Tomorrow morning, I'm waking up really early to get my body to that kind of physical stamina. And due to practice, because I faced the problem different, I didn't create any illusions about this challenge. When the marathon day comes, I will run. And I'll probably will not finish first because I'm not a professional. I'm not an athlete, but I'll definitely finish the race. I will have a sense of accomplishment because when you quit your homework, when you quit reading a book, when you quit school, you develop the habit of quitting. I have a sense of accomplishment. So Spiritism gives us the perception, the correct understanding that we are not here in a vacation. We are here gathered as families, either in a mission, in a trial, or in expiation. What is a mission? A mission is when someone changed the minds of a lot of people. Nelson Mandela was here in a mission. Mahatma Gandhi was here in a mission. And obviously, Allan Kardec fulfilled his mission. But did they, while experiencing the obligations of their mission, were they complete happy? No. Exactly the opposite. They lived through so many turmoils. They lived through so many challenges. They experienced so much pain. Why? Because whenever you decide to bring the light somewhere, those who take pleasure being the shadow, they will be against you. They will persecute you. They might not kill you with the sword, but they will kill you with words. They will kill you, diminishing your credibility by looking for flaws in your character. That's the modern killing. So these missionaries, they lived through a lot of pain to accomplish their mission. And we find in question 207 of the Spirit's book that being a father, being a mother, it's a mission to fulfill. This person has received from God a mission to direct the spirit that recently reincarnated to a healthy moral progress, to a correct path. And the more imperfect the spirit is, the more challenged becomes raising that child. And that's another challenge of the family. Educating our kids. We don't educate them for the world, we educate them we don't educate them for us, we educate them for the world. Usually we do just the opposite. We raise them as if they're going to stay forever with us. They knock the milk over the table, we go ahead and clean for them. They mess up their room, we go ahead and we clean for them. They ask and we give to them. What are we teaching them when we do this? We are teaching them that in life, when you ask, you shall receive. Is that how life works? No, it's not. We have to work really hard for the things that we want. So in my house, under my guidance, I will make this individual understand the value of work. Clean your room. Clean the milk. With love, but lots of energy. It is, through love. Because if you really want to damage your kid, if you really want to have a family challenge for the future that will give you disgrace for the rest of your life, give everything to your children. And as they grow older, since they never learned the value of work, they will try to do easy money. And that's where drug dealing comes into place. That's where dishonesty comes into place. And once we try, after we have looked at the problem, we realize we made a mistake by the way we raised them, and we try to repair them, now sometimes it's too late. Because their little personalities is fully blown. They already formed. Just like a plant. If you wait for a plant to become a tree, to correct the tree to the vertical position, it will be extremely hard. Almost impossible. If you're raising that plant and you actually put a stack on it and you wrap it around, you tie it, it will grow in a vertical position. Just the same way with children. You're making sure they're growing vertically. As a parent, you receive the mission to remove selfishness from this person's character. And how are we going to do this? We're going to observe them constantly. If our child has many toys and children comes to play with him and he says, "Not with my toys," and he grabs all the toys, what is that a sign of? I couldn't hear you. Selfishness. If your child walks into a room and he sits down and there are 10 people that he should have said hello to, but he didn't, what is that a sign of? Pride. More important, I don't have to respect these individuals. When you talk to your child and you try to correct him with love, together with energy, and he doesn't talk to you for the next 10 days, what is that a sign of? Resentfulness, grudge. We need to explain to them that we are on their side and not against them. And they will feel it. They will know it, especially when they become parents themselves. When they see that it was so hard to raise a kid, that they become thankful for the parents for what they have done. It might take a little while, but they will eventually understand your effort to direct them towards the correct path. So we don't raise children for us, we raise them for the world. We prepare them for them to face the difficulties ahead of them. And that's where living in family, it's the ideal thing for us to remove selfishness from our hearts. Why? Because growth can only take when we're living together with other people. It is impossible for us to grow if we are by ourselves. Let's say right now we want to go to a spiritual reclusion. And you run from society, and now you spend the next 30 days meditating in a mountain. As a matter of fact, you like so much this mountain that you stay there. You say you don't want to go back to society. It's too hard to live in society. You want to give yourself to God, and there you are meditating throughout the rest of your life. You did not improve a single bit. You immersed yourself in the tranquility of the mountain, but you did not become patient. To develop patience, the knowledge of being at peace, that's what patience is, we can only do that around irritable people. If there is no one provoking you, how can you exercise patience? It's impossible. How can you develop your bicep if you're not exercising with a heavier weight? It's impossible. All virtues, they need to be exercised. If there is no one around your life provoking you, it is impossible for you to exercise patience. How can you understand and develop comprehension if there is no one for you to understand? It is impossible. So when we are together in a family, we are receiving the opportunity to develop these virtues. Because each person, since they are different, they had a unique evolutionary path, they bring with them their own characteristics, their own flaws, their own imperfections, and their own qualities. And if you learn how to live harmoniously with these 5, 7, 10 people, you are practicing how to live with the entire humanity. Because that's our goal ultimately, to live with the entire humanity. To love the entire humanity, for God's sakes. If I cannot even manage to love 4 people, how in the world am I going to love the entire humanity? I must love few people before I love a lot of people. If I can learn how to serve them, I will be fulfilling my mission as a father, as a mother. And now, this mission becomes a trial. What is a trial? A trial, it's an opportunity to consolidate the theory we have learned. Let's say your math teacher, he teaches you how to add and subtract and multiply and divide for an entire month. Now, you and the teacher, we don't know yet if you have mastered this knowledge. There is one way to find out. And that way we call an exam, a test, a trial. Now, when the teacher does this, he is not against you, because we as students, we think the teacher is mean. This man, he doesn't like me. He's making me study all this. He doesn't like me. But that's the only way to find out if we have learned. By going through the trial, we have instilled in us the value, the knowledge of adding and subtract. And that's how life works. In the spiritual world, we make up plans to fix the mistakes we have done in our past. Those we have betrayed, those we have lied, those who we produced immeasurable amounts of pain. And now we beg God to reincarnate amongst these people to fix the mistakes we have done in our past. Believe me, we beg them. I know right now we might think that we are at the wrong family, with the wrong people, but in reality, we are at the right place with the right people, thinking that all is wrong. And if I live because I cannot manage these problems, if I try to run away from the problem because I can't manage the burdenship that has been placed on me, since that is part of my spiritual process, of my spiritual growth, guess what? I will find right on the following person. I will find the problem ahead of me in someone else. Why? Because I'm not running away from those people. I'm running away from myself. The things that I need to face. With that, Spiritism doesn't claim that we can never divorce. If we can be apart from one another, the same way we came together with one another, it's fine. But if we are living with lots of resentfulness, grudges, if we are very happy because the person who has deserted us got into a car accident, that's a problem right there. Because there are a lot of unfinished business between us. If the business is finished and both of us are extremely unhappy, yes, Spiritism says, you can go ahead and find someone else. But before you do that, analyze it and see if the cause of your current unhappiness, it is not already a result of an unfinished business from a previous relationship. So we are not carrying to the next one all these problems. And I say this out of personal experience because my mother, she learned that in a rather old age. She taught me many excellent lessons, and I would never had another mother. But she gave me 3 stepfathers. And this was her, in her immaturity, trying to understand what was going on. And she taught me a beautiful lesson by doing that. Because since we were moving around so much as children, I didn't ever complete 2 of the same consecutive years in the same school. I'm always moving around. And I'm very thankful because that gave me an opportunity to relate to everybody, to get along with everybody from all walks of life, because that's how you can survive as a teenager. I'm very thankful. I'm not trying to diminish my mother's importance because she did a great job. But she learned that small detail after her 40s. But then, if you are able to construct a new relationship, learning the mistakes from the previous one, this is growth that took place, not a regression. So, we can finish with our trials avoiding the expiations. What are expiations? Expiations are situations in which we cannot run away from them anymore. There is no choice. Let's say an individual, he comes with the mission to evolve. All of us were born with a mission. The number 1 mission is to evolve, to progress. And our progress is directly related to the effort we make to progress those around us, to help those grow who are living in our inner circle. That's our main job. When we fail to do that through our trials, let's say we try to escape from these trials through a process called suicide, now we come with an expiation. And what is the expiation? Expiate means to remove something out of us. So the word expiation stands for the action of removing something out of us. So now I will go through an experiment. If someone who committed suicide, he will be probably born paralyzed from his neck down if he had hanged himself. If in a previous lifetime he had shot himself in the head, he could be born with all sorts of mental, brain disabilities. He could become deaf, blind, and so forth. And that's a situation that he cannot run away from. He must face that difficulty. It's what we call an expiation. The only way he can run away from it's by committing a new suicide. And now the problem just became even bigger. There's a story about this woman who searched for the help of Chico Xavier about her son. Her son was born without any arms. And when he was 7 years old, he was diagnosed with a very rare sort of disease in his legs. And the only solution the doctor had for his illness was to cut off his legs. So the mother of this child desperately sought the help of Chico Xavier to understand what was going on. How can God do this to my child? He was born without any arms, and now you're telling me you have to remove his legs? Emmanuel, Chico Xavier's guide, explained it to Chico. This is a spirit that have committed suicide so many times. And he's the one on the spiritual world that begged to come without his arms, because he removed himself from physical existences in the past. He killed himself by using his arms. So he asked to be born without any arms, so he could go through the trials to finally expiate the wrongs that he has done. But once he got reincarnated and he perceived the problems that lay ahead of him, he was already planning to jump on the river and drown himself. This is why they wanted to amputate his legs, to avoid him running away from a new problem. So when we run away from a problem, this problem can become an expiation process. So the family that we are born in, we either could be here in a mission, a trial, or an expiation. An expiation process is if your child is born with some sort of great mental illness. And I'm not just saying here ADHD, because nowadays the pharmaceutical company loves the fact that we give everyone the diagnosis of being hyperactive disorder. Not that kind of disease, but a great impairment of the brain in which the child is completely left up to the care of the mother. If the mother leaves this child, for just a couple of minutes, the child could die. That's an expiation process. There was no accident. This is not a genetic problem per se. This is a spiritual problem that influenced the genetic process in which this person was born into a defective body. Because those who are related need to go through that expiation process. So, obviously, most of us are here on a mission to be good father and good mothers. And we're going through these trials. The trials of being understanding, comprehending, patient. And we should work well on these challenges so we will avoid the expiations of the future. By attending to our family needs, if we help our partner grow, he will help us grow as well. We can never go wrong by serving, by being humble to these people. Ever. If we think that we're not on the correct relationship as of now, let's do our best to the current relationship so we can deserve a better one. Love them, which is not a feeling. We constantly misunderstand love with a feeling. Most of our situations, love is not a feeling, love is an act. You decide to do them good. That's love. If you never met someone else before and you are kind to them, you're loving this individual. Love in action. So we will love them. We will decide to be a loving, kind husband to our wife. We will decide to be a daring partner, friend to our husband. We'll be kind to them regardless of what they do. Because in the process, we are cleaning our soul from our moral imperfections. Joanne Evangelist, the spiritual guide of Divaldo Franco, she tells her story before she became an elevated spirit. And the story was as Joanna of Cusa. One day she heard about Christ and she did everything that she could to follow Christ. She wanted to live her lifestyle because her husband was a man of power, of politics. She had to follow the lifestyle. So she wanted to serve Christ. And she got to have her meeting with Christ. And when Christ appeared to her, he said, I accept your services. And the way I accept your services, I want you to go back home and be a loving individual to your husband because he's sick in his mind. You see, whoever causes you pain, this person are not happy themselves. Anyone who produces you pain, they are unhappy. And because they don't want to make the work of getting themselves to be happy, they like to push people down so they could feel that they're better than you. These are sick, miserable people. And because you are a healthy individual inside you, you demand from yourself a health act, a health behavior when you are a healthy behavior when you are dealing with these people. So that's what she did. She went back there and she loved this individual. What does that mean? She treated him with kindness. She knew this individual was sick in his mind. And that's how she became elevated. And most of the time, we refer to these people as if they were born that way. They didn't. They became highly evolved because when the opportunity was presented to them, they chose to do the right thing. Meanwhile, most of us, we run away from the opportunity. Embrace your family. The challenges that you have, look at them as an opportunity to develop yourself. That's where your happiness lies. By serving them, you'll be serving yourself. By loving them, you're loving your neighbor. And by loving your neighbor, you are loving God. Don't give anyone the silent treatment. Speak! Don't wait for you to be in so much hatred that the entire neighborhood hears the conversation. If something bothers you, allow a moment of happiness, a moment of tranquility, and then you let them know what is bothering you. A lot of psychological tactics are needed to do this. Don't be quiet, because marriages are very difficult. We don't know who the other person is. Just to light up a little our meeting, there is this boy who came to his uncle. And he said, I heard that back in ancient China, you knew your wife only the day you got married and after marriage. And the man says, no, son, that's true everywhere. You only know them after marriage. This same man one day, after this boy grew and became a man, he said to him, today I want to celebrate the happiest day of your life. And he said, but uncle, my marriage is tomorrow. That's exactly my point. Today is the happiest day of your life. Marriage, it's a good thing. It's a loving thing. Sharing moments, being together, conversating, becoming a friend, become interested in the other person's point of view, not always presenting our point of view. I think I have told this before about these two individuals who were fighting. And you know, when you get to that point of the fight that you're so tired of what you're fighting, you run out of the arguments, but your objective here is not about the argument. This is about making the other person angry. They got to that point. This was not about the main topic anymore. This was about making the other person angry. And suddenly, they were traveling through a rural area, and he looked all these animals on a farm. And he says, "Look, sweetheart, aren't those your relatives?" And she says, with lots of sarcasm, "Yes, honey. I could see my mother-in-law, my brother-in-law, my sister-in-law, my father-in-law." And they continue with this heated conversation. Once they got home, they were so mad at one another that they started the silent treatment. And you know, the woman wants a reaction from the man. That's what we had said in the beginning. And he was giving her the silent treatment. He wouldn't say a word. This is the best way to provoke her. So she came in and says, "Do you want to eat now?" So he looked for a piece of paper near him, got a pencil, and wrote "yes," and gave it to her without even staring her in the eye. So she went there in the kitchen and she made the most horrible food you can think of. She put all pepper and all salt, and she said to herself, "This will get him talking." So he got the plate, he sat looking at the TV, and he ate this food as if he was savoring French food. He smiled like he didn't care, just to provoke her. And he did. And he was done with the plate. Inside he was burning. All his tubes. And for those of you who suffers from pepper allergy, you will know how the bathroom experience will be for this man. Then she came, "Do you want coffee now?" And he put a big Y there. Gave it to him, gave to her. She went ahead and she put sugar in the coffee, ketchup in the coffee, and then put in the freezer and then gave it to him. And once again, he savored as if it was the best coffee, made straight from Colombia. Juan Valdez. And then finally, he made the mistake of the day. He went to sleep without kissing this woman goodbye. And if you are married and you attempt to go to bed without her, without kissing her goodbye, you are making a deep crime. Because women are strange like that, I'm so sorry to say. You could spend the entire day kissing the thing and she won't notice. But if you don't kiss her before you go to sleep, now you have a problem. And before he went to bed, without kissing her goodbye, he wrote in a piece of paper, "Remember, I have a meeting tomorrow, 8 o'clock in Chicago. Wake me up at 4:30 in the morning, otherwise I will lose the flight." Gave it to her. 7:30 in the morning, he wakes up. He looks at the clock and he's furious. "I will kill this woman today. Oh my God, I so had it." So when he went to support himself out of the bed, he felt a piece of paper under his hand. He looked at it and he read, "Honey, it's 4:30, wake up." And he said, "Today I will kill this woman. I swear to God I will." So he walked towards the kitchen, but this was a wise woman. Because guess what he did? Guess what she did? She woke up really early and she fixed herself. She fixed herself so well, she looked astonishing. Her hair was all curly. She added like 2 inches of eyelashes. You know those Fuller belts? Have you ever heard of Fuller belts? They fool men. That's why they call Fuller belts. You could put that belt that makes you into the super body. It makes you an 8. If you're just a 0, that thing makes you into an 8. She put the super belt on. She painted her nails, added a lot of perfume. She looked beautiful. So, because women, with all the respect, and this goes for men as well, you need to fix yourself first for the individual who sees you constantly every day. If you're hanging around the house looking like a monster, and then you fix yourself for those who doesn't have to deal with you on the outside, you're inverting the values. They don't have to see you pretty. They could care less about you. These are people on the outside. The man that needs to see you pretty, it's the husband. Here she is, wakes up with those 2 spider reversed on top of her head, making strange sounds with her stomach. Nothing more annoying and displeasing. And man allows that super belly to grow. Oh, please, open the doors. Stuck in the belly. We should continue being gentle throughout always. Small efforts. And this is what she did. She fixed herself. So when he opened the door and he was ready to strangle her, he looked at her and says, "Oh my God. I don't know why God has made you so beautiful, yet so stupid." And he said, "Well, sweetheart, that's very easy. God made me beautiful so you could fall in love with me. But God made me also stupid so I could fall in love with you." Conversation, dialogue, the ability to communicate. That is the psychological tool to solve any challenges that we have. Because this is a topic for a seminar. And if we speak for 3 days, we won't be done with this topic. Because there are so many things that could give us challenges. Yet it's always through conversation, through dialogue, that we can solve our challenges. And because of the time, allow me one more story. Because one of a super challenge to a family is when a relative dies. And the lack of understanding of what death is all about. Because many people, they don't have this brilliant understanding that we have of life. We don't die. We just leave a broken machine behind. That's all it is. We continue with our feelings, with our love. But most people, unfortunately, they don't have access to this spiritual knowledge that we have. And one day, this woman found herself in some deep, dire straits. She was so sad and unhappy and miserable and depressed. She went all through the stages when dealing with death. Why? Because her 8-year-old boy got into a car accident and passed away. After she was done with that, she went to a complete state of denial. She started fixing his bed as if he had messed it up. She used to serve him breakfast as if he was there and say goodbye to him as if he was going to school. On the same time he returned from school, here she is expecting them to come in. She would pretend that he came in, serve him afternoon snack, and later on at nighttime, when the boy was not laying on bed, she used to cry herself to sleep. And this went on for months and months until one day she felt so tired that she thought to herself that life would have no meaning if she didn't know that this boy continued to exist. And her guardian angels gave her an image that was in accordance with her spiritual beliefs. When she went to sleep, she came out of her body. And she went into a specific place in the spiritual world for children. And she looked around. This looked like a regular city park, but more enhanced, more beautiful. the flowers actually emitted light and sound. And children, lots of children were playing around, but instead of running after one another, they were actually flying up in the sky. And of course, she was anxiously looking for her boy, but he wasn't flying. She looked for them, but he wasn't there. These boys were touching their wings, and suddenly she saw her own boy walking towards her. She runs towards him, hugs him, and she says, "Sweetheart, I miss you so much. You have no idea how much pain I'm going through because you're not there with me." And the boy just kept staring at her. He didn't say a word. And he looked at the children playing, he looked at her, and she said, "My boy, why are you not playing? Why are you not flying together with your friends?" And he said, "Mommy, you have cried so much out of despair that your tears made my wings so wet that prevents me from flying. Stop crying, Mother. I am fine." So this woman returns to her body and understands that her boy was not dead. He just left a broken machine. This is just the process in his evolutionary path. We meet together on the spiritual world as families because that's where we came from, as families, as individuals. There are those who love you in the spiritual world. They are protecting you, they are guiding you, and they are doing everything they can do for you to succeed in this lifetime. Why? Because they want us to go back and live with them in a better place. A place that they do deserve, but yet we don't because of our own flaws. So, live your life in such a way that when you were born, while everyone around you were laughing, you were crying. Carry yourself with so much faith and resilience and resignation and selfless that when you die, while everybody around you is crying, you are laughing because you completed your earthly obligations. This is the message of the highly evolved spirits that come to let us know to fulfill our tasks, to serve our family, and we'll be serving God. We'll be serving our neighbors. That humanity is the extension of our family. If we don't love them, it's impossible to achieve our needs. This is why Castor Alves, through the hands of Chico Xavier, writes about love, progress, and sustaining with courage the challenges that we have. This is why he said, in a beautiful poem called March On, in other words, let's move on, let's progress, let's move forward. When he said, life is full of mysteries and compassed of laws of beauty, which compels us to evolve. From God we emanate, multiple forms we reincarnate, longing for perfection and love. In humanity we seek the truth from many myths, yearning for peace and evolution. We cause in our path multiple lives and deaths, victims of our own disillusion. From the eternal struggle, building ourselves from the rubble, we learn ways to overcome. Despite the pain and misery, nevertheless, we grow ceaselessly from darkness to dawn. From the raindrop, a plant reaches the top, triumphant at last. The root appears to be gloom, but manure converts to perfume, transmutation at its best. The plant will be crowned with flowers all around, birds' opera on their arrival. But flowers too shall pass, their martyrdom is a blast for the ground's revival. From nature we are taught, work hard, that's the law, all life is in movement. Sculpting through sacrifices, we'll carve blocks of vices. Inside the stone lies a monument. Lessons from suffering and pain. Change will always reign, even narrows, tyrants without seas, under the law of reincarnation. Through missions, trials, and expiations, they too will be messengers of peace. Let no one be idle. Today's angel was yesterday's Adam. Perfection is everyone's destiny. Life's purpose, splendid. God's love, transcendent. Our school, universe's eternity. On earth from time to time, sublime beacons of light dissipate the shadows away. Their presence are felt, forever in us they dwell, transforming night into day. Never in history a sacrifice, such as the one portrayed by Christ, transpired for the sake of truth. From the cross, the message is heard, forgive all, always serve, your pain I will soothe. It's Socrates and the hemlock. It's Caesar's war being fought, inflaming oppression and tyranny. It's Celine and his art, the imperialism of Bonaparte, spreading domination and cruelty. It's Dr. King's I Have a Dream, Lincoln's speeches never seen, the incarnation of renovators. It's the embodiment of humility from the charitable Francis of Assisi, the gospel resuscitator. Blessed be the teachers who illuminate the seekers, inspiring virtues and light. Bliss is yours to conquer, although perfection is yonder, your progress is bright. In the entire universe, divine celestial verses decree, march on. A heavenly love awaits. Have hope, have faith towards the infinite to come. Thank you, God, for the blessing of speaking. Thank you, Spiritist Society of Baltimore. In the name of my friend Daniel, Kirsten, and all of those at the board of directors for inviting us one more time. And thank you for the patience of listening. Thank you.
Passage of the Gospel according to Spiritism, as we usually do. And it's interesting that Julio was able to exemplify many of the teachings that we read. It's like, okay, let's go ahead and now and continue studying. We are a little bit over time, but we would like to extend a little bit more. If you have a question, if you have a comment that you would like to make pertaining to the topic tonight, that perhaps Julio is here, as he said, under our command to answer and to comment on. So if you please wish to have to raise a question, please let me know. I'll bring the microphone and we'll have Julio answer for us. We'll go to Kirsten and then Yasko back here. Give me one second.
Thank you. What type of feedback or advice could you give about either blended families or step families and children in the light of Spiritism?
First of all, may I ask if you want to stand up just for... you want to stretch yourself? I know it's hard to sit for. And since I'm so happy they invited me, I had to take the opportunity and extend the time. You relaxed? Stretched a little? Okay, good. Have a seat. Well, Kirsten, thank you so much for having the respect of asking the question first. She's just being very nice, first question, but in chapter 14 of the Gospel according to Spiritism, this is a chapter that covers about our family ties. And there is one thing that we learn in this chapter, is that there are two kinds of family. One that is consanguineal, which meaning these are the people we share the same blood. And then we have our spiritual family. So blending families are sometimes could be people who are the real spiritual family. Because when we are young, we are very naive. And we might get into relationships that this is not a re-encounter, but these people are completely strange. And unfortunately, since we allowed hormones to lead our behavior, we got married with them, and sometimes we even had kids with them. But these were not people we were supposed to be with. And later on, in a very healthy way, we dissolve this relationship. And later on, we might find the person who is actually in tune with our spiritual evolution. Someone who will look towards the same way, but would not be exactly what we are expecting them to be, but they are in tune with our spiritual needs, with our evolution. And maybe these are the people we were supposed to be with them to begin with. But since as young adults we allowed our mating needs to be more important than anything else, we could have made some mistakes. Because there are some people who have no relationship whatsoever with their biological parents. And they have a great affinity with their stepfathers, with their stepmothers. So what is more important? Is it who donated the sperm or the egg, or who raised these people? There are some people that I have heard, and these are men who tells me to show me their manhood. That's what they're trying to do. I have 7, 8, 9 kids. That's what they tell me. And I always ask them the question, how many women? And they give me the slick smile because they want to show how manly they are. And they say, well, 5, 4, you know. And who are raising these children? It's not you. First, you're here. I'm seeing you right now. So somebody's raising these children. You know, it's a great responsibility to have a child. But these people who are raising these children could be their spiritual family instead, because of the affinity we have with them. So, because the real family, it's not the blood family, it's the spiritual family. And sometimes it happens that we're not together with our spiritual family when we are involved with someone that are blood related. That happens pretty often because of our anxiety in our teenager years, when we get married with these people that we're not supposed to. And then later on in life, we might find someone else. So like we have stated before, according to chapter 22 of the Spirit's book about the dissolutions of marriage, yes, we can dissolve our relationships if we are not going to leave any scars behind, especially if children are not involved. Because if children are involved, what happens with them? We could be also responsible for it. If we have done this already, let's say you are someone who are into a situation that maybe you reconsider that it could be different in the past. Like my mother, you know. Spiritism asks us to look forward, not backwards. The only reason why we're looking backwards is to learn from our challenges, from our mistakes, so we can look forward into it and repair our problems. So how do we do? What is the Spiritist guide, counseling, advice for individuals who are living together but are not blood related? Just get along with everybody. That's our main job, to get along. What is to get along? It's not that you accept what the other individual is doing. You understand them. You comprehend them. You're able to tolerate them because you also know how much tolerance you need from them. Just get along and like everybody. Isn't it so better to try to get along with everybody?
Thank you. Yasko, please.
Okay, thank you for your beautiful message. When or how you see this vicious cycle? For example, things passing from grandfather to the father to the grandson, etc., that we see in the society. This chain of incarceration, for example, when the great-great-grandfather was, the whole family seems to go through this vicious cycle. Or when you, as you said, someone tend by affinity to commit the same choices, same mistakes, like choosing 4, 5, 6 marriage, all the same type. When and how you see, mostly how this cycle is broken, what happens in order to break the thing, what we should force in to break faster.
In question 917 of the Spirit's book, Allan Kardec gives us the answer, and that is through education. Not an education that will teach us our intellect, but an education that will teach us our morality. It's a reformation. It's a reform, I'm sorry. It's a reform of our habits that create our character. Our character comes from our habits. So if the habits are the same, how can we change the character? It begs the question then, where does the habits come from? Well, the habits, they come from our actions. Where the actions come from? Well, the actions, they come from our thought. Okay? So our thoughts create our actions. Our actions, they create our habits. Our habits, they create our character. And ultimately, our character will shape our destiny, where we arrive in life as individuals. So the best way is to educate ourselves, to become aware. Because if we're not aware, how can we fix the problem to begin with? So the cycle will continue as long as the individual ignores that it's happening. This is why Jesus said, the truth shall set us free. In other words, ignorance keeps us in prison. If I ignore, I am in the prison of my own vicious cycle. And why do I get myself into that vicious cycle? Because I don't know. I still am enslaved to my passions. I'm not even aware they exist. Question 919 of the Spirit's book. What is the most efficient way to better ourselves in this lifetime and to resist the draw of evil? What an excellent question. What is the most efficient way to better ourselves in this lifetime and to resist the draw of evil? How can we cut the vicious cycle? That's basically what the question is asking. There are many ways to change ourselves, but Allan Kardec was concerned with the most efficient way. What is the most efficient way? The one that gives us the best result in the shortest amount of time. Let's say someone wants to lose weight. How many ways we can lose weight? There are many ways. But do you want to attempt just any one? No. You want to try the most efficient way of losing weight. What's the most efficient way? The one that gives you the best result in the fastest amount of time. Okay? So what's the fastest way we can improve ourselves and to resist the draw of evil? Now, evil here is not an entity. It's not a devil. Evil, it's any imperfection, it's any flaw that we have. That becomes evil to our behavior. If my problem is jealousy, that's evil to me. If my problem is greed, it's evil to me. So how can I resist that? And the question is, a sage of antiquity has told you. In other words, a wise man from the past, and that's a clue. We know the answer a long time ago, we just haven't heard it yet because we keep clogging our ears with our passions. A sage man of antiquity has told you, know thyself. In other words, know who you are. How can I fix something that I don't know that it's broken? That's how you stop the vicious cycle. So Allan Kardec, he established that education, a reform of our characters. When we analyze all different parts of society, our school system, our health system, our political system, where do we foster selfishness? Where do we maintain it? Where do we grow it? And attack the problem at the root to uproot the problem, to stop the vicious cycle. That's how we do it. And what's our responsibility to stop that cycle? To change ourselves. Because a speaker can use the podium for the next 10 hours, and nothing will be more convincing and louder than a person's action of what is to be a changed individual. This is what Mahatma Gandhi used to say. Be the change that you wish to see. If that's what we want to see, we will stop our own vicious cycle.
Thank you, Julio, once more, and we'll move to the last question.
Thank you, Julio, for your kindness of coming here. My question is related with domestic violence. Since we learn, like, love
is the answer. And with the story of Joanna de Cusa, going back to her husband, when is enough when we're talking about domestic violence? It could be from husband to wife or the opposite, from parent to a child of the opposite. So when's enough?
For this one, I have to excuse myself in front of my friends from the Spirit Society of Baltimore, the Board of Directors, to speak of my own experience. Because when we are using this podium, when we are speaking in the name of Spiritism, we are not here to talk about ourselves. We are here to present Spiritism and not what I think, my own ideas. But since I work in the jail system, and once again I apologize for referring to myself, I see many cases of domestic abuse, many domestic violences. And there are so many instances in which if the police was called, we would prevent a tragedy. Because whenever someone kills another individual, it's rarely cold-blooded. Usually this is a fight that escalates out of proportion, and then we kill the other individual. So when they come and talk to us in the jail system, this is the usual sentence that we hear. I became blind. I lost myself. That's what they say. Now, I know that suddenly they didn't lose sight. I know that suddenly they didn't lose their brain. What they mean by this is that they were not thinking of what they're doing. That's what despair do to us. What is despair? The lack of hope. We don't know how to wait. We think that tomorrow's problem will be worse than today's problem. Therefore, this one becomes unbearable, and we are in a state of despair. If there is a powerful lesson we have learned from that place, is that you never act on a heated mind. Always allow yourself to cool off before you make a decision. Always. Because usually on a heated mind, we will regret. Because the husbands that unfortunately kill their wives, and there are many wives that kill their husbands, it doesn't take them hours to realize that they have done the biggest mistake of their lives. Number one mistake, they have killed someone who they say they love. How can you kill someone that you say you loved? It's contradictory. That's big mistake number one. Big mistake number two that they cry about. Suddenly, they realized their kids, who they love so much, he have killed the mother of his children. Now, you did not want to hurt your children when you did this. So you're trying to hurt this woman when you became blind. Not your children, but suddenly he realizes, I took their mother away. And then, third big mistake. They realized he also took his father away because he would spend the next 30 years in the prison system. So, our experience has been, you don't play with domestic violence. You call the police. You're doing yourself a favor and you're doing him a favor. Because if he loses his mind, he's also losing his life. This is not just about you. This is also about his safety. Because he will throw his life in the garbage for no good reason. And unfortunately, most of these killings are due to betrayals. He left her for a younger version. She was 50, and like we say in Portuguese, he chose two 25s, Or the opposite happens as well, She abandoned him because he got too old. He couldn't function anymore. So she looked for a younger version of him. These are betrayals. So what's the thought? Selfishness. Pure selfishness. If you're not going to be with me, you're not going to be with anyone else. That's the thinking pattern. And once they do this, now they're in prison for the next 30 years. Suddenly the crime will be gone, and all they have to look forward to is just time. in a place where they are surrounded by the person of the same sex. Do you know what I mean, or do I have to go into details? Yeah. So their needs will be attended. And now they realize, when they come and talk to us, I'm not saying this for her. It's not that I'm trying to protect her from you killing her. That's not the point. I'm telling you, be wise. Think with your brain and not with anything else. If this woman has abandoned you, let her be with the other guy. Let her be with the other guy. You're going to grieve. You're going to be depressed. You're going to cry. But within 6 months, within a year, you're together with someone else. And life moves forward. If you kill this woman, she will not be yours. You'll be throwing yourself in the prison system. You'll be surrounded by men. You'll be surrounded by men. And your children will spend the rest of their lives, especially if they're in an age that they could understand what was going on, what they could have done to prevent this tragedy. So it's never a solution. Call the cops. What moment do we know? Should we divorce or not divorce this individual? Are we about to kill them? Are we making plans in our head that we're going to strangle them? That's the point. It's not up to us to tell to a couple, stay with them or divorce them. That's not our job. We give them the spiritual doctrine. We tell them about what Spiritism tells us, about the laws of nature, about challenges, repairing problems, and then we can grow once we fixed our mess. Why do we have this individual in our lives right now? That sort of thing. Because this man did not hit Joanna of Cusa. This man was a gambler. He was together with other women. He didn't respect her. He was that sort of sick. He wasn't physically abusing Joanna of Cusa. And that's very, very difficult for a lot of men, especially from South America, to understand. Because they grow with that mentality that women belong to them. If they're not doing what you're supposed to do, let me smack you to straighten you up. That's the mentality. Believe it or not. And how can we fix this? Sometimes the divorce, call the cops before we prevent a tragedy. He might sit in jail and he will realize what could happen to him if he continues to abusing this woman. Because once they are there, let's say there was a fight, he punched her face, and now they are in jail. And they're there for a couple of weeks, sometimes months. Oh my God, you should hear the conversations over the phone. Oh, sweetheart, I promise you, I would love you forever. I'll walk down on my knees. I beg you, I'm so sorry. Because they see the reality that could be theirs. So they change. So it's a good thing. Call the cops to prevent a tragedy. And our children, we're going to raise them respecting women. I've heard so many times women saying to their kids and to all the women that have girls, hold your girls inside your house because my boy, he's loose. In other words, be careful with your girls. I'm not going to do anything to my boy. He's just being a boy. Boy will always be boy. Being a boy doesn't mean you're going to learn how to be disrespectful to people. If I raise a child and my boy, my son, sees me mistreating his mother, he will think that's just natural. You speak to women like that. You belittle them, you downgrade them. Once he finds himself a girlfriend, guess how he would speak to his girlfriend? Exactly the same way. So we stop that right there. When they're children, we teach them how to respect. Mommy, we teach, you should respect other people's daughter, It's the right thing to do. Don't do like your cousins. You teach them to stop the behavior. If it's personal, call the cops. That's what the law enforcement are there for. Once again, I am so thankful for this invitation. I apologize for my harsh words. Sometimes I completely forget the audience that I'm addressing to. I could be using, someone told me this before. You know, you always think that you're speaking to prisoners. We are not here as masters, as representatives of any kind. We feel to be microphones. That's it. We're just amplifying these people's voice. And I give you my heartful, deeply thankful. Thank you for giving me the patience of listening to what they want to say through us. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Julio. Thank you so much. So let us take this opportunity to end with a very so short visualization and a prayer of reflection of tonight's lessons that we heard and we absorbed through the blessing of this microphone. We give thanks to our great Creator and also our loving guide and model, Jesus, for these moments of reflection, of introspection. Allow us to gain from tonight, from this evening, more strength, courage, patience, and resignation. May each one of us feel the blessing from on high. Imagine now this light falling over you as a hymn of love from our Creator, embracing you and encouraging you to march on, as the poet says. Allow yourself to feel this moment of peace, if not at any other moment, but today. Allow yourself this opportunity to begin again, together with like-minded friends, on this journey of renewal, of renovation. Remembering how Christ was when he walked this earth, not by himself, but with his disciples, reminding us the need to be together in these moments. We thank the mentors, the spirit mentors and guides for being with us here today and bringing our loving friends from the state of New Jersey. May we give them, on behalf of this wonderful institution, this society manifested here on earth, our loving embrace and gratitude always. And may each one of us, under the guidance of our spirit guides and the great Creator, go home today more encouraged and enlightened for the challenges ahead. We thank you, and so be it.